Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Hoss. The thermal printer, Dymo, 4XL. I have a love-hate relationship with this thing. Every time I hear it go, bzzz, it's both triggering, knowing that I have to ship another package, but also very rewarding because it means that somebody out there wants to read my comic book. Pretty crazy. As you can see, we are not currently in my office right now. I had to move the setup because I'm currently in Shippingville right now. As you can see, I'm totally schlubby. My hair's all messed up. But hey, if you can't subscribe to me at my worst, you certainly can't subscribe to me at my best. And I felt like this was an important video to do, even though I didn't plan on really making a video because I got to ship all of these orders right now. But a couple interesting stories sort of happened in the last few days. And shout out to Bronze Age Nerd and Bronze and Modern Comic Gods, who covered both of these separate stories, kind of scandalous things, shady business situations in the comic book market. And I thought it was important to kind of talk a little bit about them because I felt like in doing this Kickstarter fulfillment, in doing a Kickstarter, it's not too dissimilar from sort of the situation and a lot of the complaints and discussion that is being held about these two companies right now, as far as, putting money into a presumed service and trusting that that service is going to be delivered, and paying for it up front, which effectively is what people do with the Kickstarter. So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of talk a little bit about these two stories in case you guys haven't heard about them yet. And then ultimately just kind of talk about, how it's really important, who you trust your money with, who you trust your comics with. But let's kind of get into these two stories today. Now, if you guys haven't heard them, there's two separate situations going on, shady business dealings in the comic book back issue market right now. One of which is a company called Hero Restoration, and another one is called HOTSHOT Comics. Now, both of these stories kind of take place in different parts of the space. One is more in sort of the modern space, which is the HOTSHOT version, and then another one is kind of in the vintage market, which is, of course, Hero Restoration. And both of these are situations that kind of emerged in the CGC forum space. Now, if you guys know, of course, CGC, they have their forum page where they do a lot of discussions. And I guess I'll break down each of them one by one. And I want to start with the HOTSHOT one first, because that is something that CGC actually responded to. Now, let me kind of pull this up for you. I was able to at least be able to have the camera cut to the web browser here. But this is a post from CGC Mike. Now, CGC Mike is, kind of a legendary CGC spokesperson here on the forum page. Effectively, what HOTSHOT Comics did is they are an online retailer that do a lot of things like, pre-screen 9/8, or maybe they do retail variants and things like that. So they have customers that, buy books from them, do the whole pre-screen situation where, if you guys know, you buy a new comic book, then HOTSHOT Comics will send it to CGC, get the 9/8 for you, and then deliver your 9/8 copy. Well, apparently what happened with this particular comic store is they've basically just been pulling the strings with a lot of comic book collectors, where they were selling people pre-screen 9/8s and then just never delivering to them. So they kept kicking the can down the road. If you think about it, it's like a new comic book. You order a new comic book, so presumably you have to wait a little bit for that comic book to be delivered to the store itself, and then HOTSHOT has to send it in to CGC, and then CGC has to send it back to HOTSHOT, and then HOTSHOT has to send it back to you. So this is a process that, depending on turnaround times and all that sort of thing, I mean, who knows? This could take like 3, 4, 8 weeks even, depending on how backed up CGC is. So what they kept doing is people would buy these pre-screen 9/8s from them, and then they would just kind of kick the can down the road. You would check back in with them. You'd say, hey, I just wanted to see if there's any updates on my order. I ordered this pre-screen 9/8 from you. And apparently what was going on was a lot of smoke and mirrors where HOTSHOT Comics was responding to emails as, different employees and doing all this kind of shady stuff. And effectively what he was doing was, either pocketing the money or not actually sending stuff into CGC. And then he kept saying like, oh, it's CGC's fault. They haven't actually done the returns yet, or CGC is backed up and it's on them. And then CGC has started to get, a lot of complaints on behalf of the HOTSHOT orders, to the point where they actually had to say, like, this guy is actually full of it. And a lot of this stuff, are books that we have not been paid for yet, or HOTSHOT, didn't actually put these orders in, or whatever the case was. And you can actually see here that CGC Mike made this post, which is effective immediately. The membership account for HOTSHOT Comics /Asheville Comics /Douglas Siegelis, collectively HOTSHOT Comics. So those Asheville Comics and Douglas Siegelis were actually aliases that HOTSHOT Comics would use, or former businesses that he would use once, the shadiness got kicked in, that he would actually change his name to a different comic shop. So that just kind of goes to show how shady it actually was, that he was, basically catch me if you can here and using different aliases, has been terminated by CGC. If you have submitted comics to CGC through HOTSHOT Comics, or you have purchased pre-sales of CGC graded books from HOTSHOT Comics, and you believe those books are currently at CGC, please contact our customer service team and service and collectibles group.com. You will be asked to fill out a claim form and provide purchase submission documentation. Since CGC was not a party of any transactions between individual collectors and HOTSHOT Comics, we cannot promise or guarantee any particular result. However, we will try to work with you and with HOTSHOT Comics to resolve your situation as best we can. CGC will not charge collectors for any book submitted or pre-purchased through HOTSHOT Comics. If you can show that you are out of pocket, we will not charge for shipping either. Please understand that we can only help to the extent the particular books are in our possession, i.e. actually submitted to CGC in the first place. So good on CGC to try to make this right. I feel like, this is a situation where HOTSHOT Comics either pocketed a lot of money or spent the money, or, did some kind of shady dealings. And to the point where CGC had enough people complaining that they feel like they have to, make it right in some kind of way. Now, HOTSHOT Comics has gone onto various forums and Facebook groups and other pages and kind of explained that, I'm working with CGC and, I'm talking with the lawyers and, he has his own side to the story. And, hey, look, I don't know. I'm not there. I don't know the inner workings of the whole situation, but I will say that, I will put links to these forums if you guys want to do your own reading for them. But suffice to say, CGC had to get their lawyers involved. They've ceased their partnership with HOTSHOT Comics, or at least their account with HOTSHOT Comics, and they're trying to make it right. And this kind of really, goes back into sort of a lot of the conversation that I've been seeing online, which is, something that I feel, personally attached to, which is this idea of people are like, why do people even do pre-screen 9/8? Why would you ever pay someone up front? Why would you ever give someone money to deliver a product, like a pre-screen 9/8? Why wouldn't you just send it in yourself? And there's a lot of valid things to talk about in that. There's a lot of good questions there. But at the same time, I think people paying upfront isn't that crazy. I mean, it is something that we all do. We trust these businesses and these entities that they're going to deliver on what they promise. I mean, if you buy a comic book from an eBay store, you pay up front. If you buy anything online, you're paying up front, and you believe that that good or that service is going to be delivered to you in a time frame in which you sort of agreed upon. And so I don't think it's that crazy. I know a lot of people are thinking like, a lot of these comic businesses are shady, and it is a little bit weird, to do a pre-screen 9/8 and then they have to kind of farm it out to another company like CGC. So there's a lot of like handling that happens in the way of that. But, it's not too dissimilar than what I'm doing with my Kickstarter. People trust in me to deliver a comic book product, and then I'm working with various vendors to print the comic, to, do the art, to do the graphics and all this sort of stuff. And this is just kind of part of the process. And, take it from me, I will say, for a lot of these businesses that are doing these services and delivering on this, having that capital up front is really kind of important. I mean, it's pretty necessary, especially in having to, fulfill a lot of these items and stuff. It goes a long way, and it takes a tremendous burden off of, the business that is trying to fulfill all this stuff to have the capital up front, which is really helpful. I mean, this is why companies get angel investment, which now I guess I kind of want to transition to the other sort of shady dealing that has been happening out there in the comic book space, and that is the one of Hero Restoration. Now, if you guys happen to know, Hero Restoration was actually a pretty well-known restoration, pressing, cleaning company within the comic book space. I mean, well-known relatively speaking, right? Like these are just, small businesses that people start up, like they just start their pressing service, and it's just, it just starts with a guy who just happens to know how to do this stuff. And then eventually, word of mouth spreads to where people really want to start to use them. Well, Hero Restoration kind of blew up a little bit, got, made a name for themselves in the hobby, and especially in the boom of 2021, when there was massive, massive interest in people getting books pressed, getting books cleaned and restored and all that stuff, and then sending it in for grading. Hero Restoration absolutely blew up to the point where people were sending them like the top of the top books, constant AF-15s, Golden Age books, you name it, like high-priced 5-figure books. I mean, who knows, maybe even 6-figure books in certain situations. And there was a forum post started by someone on here on CGC that actually went all the way back to, let me bring up the first page here, all the way back to June 9th. And I just want to read you this post because this goes on for like 40 pages. And I'll just show you guys kind of what happened here in this situation. Is there anyone out there with books out to Hero Restoration, Mike DeChellis, that have not have their books returned? I dropped off 9 books with a representative of Hero Restoration at a local New Jersey con last August and was told the turnaround times for press and clean would be 11 weeks. It is now close to 10 months with no books and only excuses. Supposedly, Mike had a heart attack earlier this year and let go of his entire staff, but even weeks after he said, I'd have my books back, nada. A week ago, he said my books were going out, nothing. This Wednesday, he said he was packing them up and would send me the tracking info, nothing. When I inquired again today, his response was, I kid you not, my girlfriend's dog just ate all my baby chickens. I am offline until further notice. We'll talk about that in a second. Sounds like he is certainly not in his right mind. For the record, he has my Amazing Spider-Man 6, 7, 15, 18, 70, Daredevil 7, FF16, and 19, and Invincible 1, somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 or more worth of books. I have collectibles, insurance, yada, yada, yada. And he kind of goes on to explain, some of the things that he was asking. And then at the bottom here, he says, maybe a class action lawsuit is needed. Now, mind you, this was on June 9th. This forum page goes on for 40 pages of basically other people talking about, how they've had similar situations waiting for Hero Restoration. And it really goes into some crazy stories and crazy, anecdotes here where eventually the person from Hero Restoration actually does post on this forum. And, look, I'm not here to, take sides or anything. I'm just hoping that everyone can be made right in this situation. But the Hero Restoration guy does say that, his company exploded. They grew too fast. He had to hire a bunch of staff and then lay off a bunch of staff. And then he had a heart attack from the stress. And all of this stuff happens. Now, again, that's not to excuse it. I mean, when you decide to start a business and take tens of thousands, if not, hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory from people, you bear this responsibility. I mean, what do you expect? If someone is giving you an AF-15 book that is worth $50,000 to do restoration on, yeah, I mean, you're somewhat liable to some degree for that book. And if you can't meet the deadlines, you can't meet the turnaround times, you are taking people's money. They're probably paying you a decent amount. They're probably paying you, a percentage of the value of that comic when it's something, so high value at that point to do that work. You have to be, your customer service has to be on point. That's really the thing. And your transparency has to be on point because, again, this is a lot of money that we're talking about here. This requires a tremendous amount of trust from that of the consumer to give their books to all these pressers. And actually, it's really crazy to think about this. Like, think about all of the money, within just the collectible comic space that is currently just, changing hands at all points in time, always, right? Like just the amount of people doing pressing, the amount of people doing cleaning, the amount of people doing restoration, the amount of people doing pre-screen 9.8 submissions, sending your books in, dropping them off here, sending them there, going in and out of CGC. I mean, there is a huge responsibility for the companies that are taking on this business, that are taking on this work. And ultimately, they are liable for this stuff. Now, again, my heart goes out to that guy. I'm sure it is very stressful. And, for all we know, he did, in fact, have a heart attack. But again, I think transparency is key in this situation. And, if you're somebody who you can't fulfill your orders, you got to talk to your customers. It's been 10 months. I too would have, a lot of anxiety if I sent in, $10,000 worth of books and I haven't heard from the guy in over a year. That's absolutely insane. So, it's really, really a tough situation. There's been a lot of people in that particular post, which again, I'll link in the description, that have talked about how, they're willing to help. They're willing to, get these books shipped back to the people that have them. I mean, if Hero Restoration actually has to close up their shop, again, I think that the only thing or the right thing to do would be to get these books back to the people. It's bad enough that these people are already going to lose out on whatever money down payments that they paid this guy. I don't know what the total situation is. I don't know if he has no more capital, if he spent that money hiring people that he then had to fire because they couldn't do the restoration. Again, I don't know all the details, but I guess I'll end the video with just kind of reiterating the fact that, doing comic business is a huge responsibility. All of these companies that do this stuff, even the LCSs, we're working with inventory here that is extremely valuable, highly valued, and a lot of people are spending a lot of money in this space, and that requires a lot of responsibility overall. So, at the end of the day, got to be careful with who you trust your money with. From a business standpoint, have to be extremely transparent. Customer service needs to be at the forefront with a lot of this stuff. And at the end of the day, I hope that both of these situations, I hope that everybody out there who spent money with these two companies can be made right. And yeah, I hope that I too can put my money where my mouth is and make it right with all the people that ordered my comic book. So anyways, that's all I got for this video. Two interesting stories going on in the comic book business, a lot of shady dealings going on. Let me know what you guys think about these situations. The comic collectible world, the secondary market is definitely a little bit of the Wild West. A lot of operation in this space isn't done at the, highest of standards. We haven't even talked about the fact that, think about the amount of money that exchanges hands, just friends and family. Think about all the people that run their comic book businesses and don't pay taxes on items, all of the stuff that happens, just the amount of cash that goes back and forth at Comic Cons that isn't reported. I mean, the collectible world is full of interesting people, interesting characters, and maybe not the most scrupulous business practices. So you got to make sure that you are very, very careful. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Sanity books going out soon, I promise. And the online store will be available. If you didn't get on the Kickstarter, you will get a chance to pick up your copy. So anyways, that's all I got. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next video.